Story in today's La Presse, welcome back. That kind of made eyebrows, certainly when we talked about it this morning in planning today's show, it made kind of eyebrows raise a little bit, only because I really hadn't heard anything about this lately. Natasha,
a
had
little
you?
bit? I'm
Okay,
like
a lot.
shaking my
Okay.
head. I'm like, are you kidding me?
You know, typically when we would hear about someone complaining to the OQLF, it'd be from a business owner calling us or texting us to let us know, hey, I can't believe this guy showed up at my coffee shop, an OQLF inspector, and didn't like the fact that I had cappuccino on the menu or whatever that would happen to be, and that got into a fight. We had it from a gentleman, I think, out of Montreal North not that long ago, right? Well, it turns out, according to statistics, this is the actual number, 64% rather, of complaints. Now, this is in Montreal. Remember, it's not across the entire province. The numbers we're going to cite are basically here. But those complaints to the OQLF have increased by 50% in the last 2 years. Not 5%, 50%. So in reading about the story, I'll try to make sense of this and why this might be happening. But more important than why, what does it mean? What is it necessarily going to change, if anything, right?
Especially during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Again, I just sort of feel like priorities.
Yeah.
Okay.
But remember, every time someone does file a complaint as an individual, right, it has to be followed up at the
Yes.
OQLF. So it's not even about them as much as it is of people who apparently, even during a pandemic, have got a lot of free time to walk around and look for these sorts of issues. So we thought we'd try to find a little bit more about this today. And here's the deal. We're going to right now talk to someone who's got an insight on this. Frédéric Bérard is a doctor of law and co-director of the Observatoire National en matière des droits linguistiques here in Quebec. And I read in the story, Monsieur Bérard, that as much as the numbers are shocking to see that big of an increase over 2 years, you're suggesting perhaps we don't look at these numbers and panic, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not because we have a great numbers of complaints that this is a new problem. I mean, filing a complaint doesn't mean many things if you take a look at it. And the other thing, because I'm sure you wanted that interview because I gave that interview yesterday at the La Presse, and what I said, I mean, it's not because you have a lot of complaints as we do now that we can say or conclude that there's a problem with the French situation in Montreal, in the sense that most of the time those people, those experts like Permotte and all those guys, what they are evaluating is the following: is what is the mother tongue that we spoke at home, that we speak at home. But the problem is it's not obviously. I mean, with immigration, there will be less and less people who speak French at home in Montreal. But the thing is also is that you have 94% of people in Quebec right now that speaks French, and that's an enormous amount of people. That's the greatest of all time. So this is what I tried to explain, actually.
Yeah, now that's a point worth sort of getting into, right? Because the government uses these figures, as you pointed out, about how we're seeing less and less French, which is the reason to promote and protect French, according to them and according to some statisticians here. Yet you point out that we've never seen more French spoken at home. We're at 94%. And you say that, as you said just a minute ago, even though there are more complaints, it doesn't mean there are more problems. But the perception is that it must mean more problems if there are more complaints. So how does the OQLF deal with this?
Well, I think promoting that at a certain point, because we have some media in Quebec that saying that the French situation is at a certain point it's a real problem right now. So we just keep saying it as a mantra. French, we have problem with French. We have problem with French. But as I said, and I'll say it again, the methodology to analyze that, if you is only the fact.
Okay,
Oh,
hold
we're
on.
losing you.
Monsieur Bérard, we're losing
you're
you on
cutting
the
out.
phone. So if you can, I don't know if you're near a window or not, if you can move around, you're kind of fading in and out there.
Is that better like that?
A little bit.
Yeah, well, sorry, I'm just up north in region.
That's okay.
That's better. Got better.
So I'm doing my best to speak with my Anglophone friend, but it's not easy to do.
No, it's much better right now, so
It's
that's
much-
great.
Well, maybe it's just François Legault and it's his government that's trying to disturbing the line.
Yeah, they probably knew you were calling to be on an English language radio station. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well,
you
what
go
I
ahead.
was saying in few words is that, of course, we need to be careful about French. I'm a francophone myself, as you can figure it out. But I mean, you have to take the right numbers. You have to consider the right methodologies. And if we're considering the mother tongue, I mean, obviously, for the next 50 years, we will conclude that we have problem with French. But the thing is that people speak French, and they never spoke French like they do right now. So can we just take this for granted and try to move forward a bit?
I mean, I love the message. I love what you're saying. And obviously, we were very interested in speaking to you because of what you're saying. We're amenable to that, right? Now, how about Francophones? Do you feel like, for example, if we're joking about the CAQ trying to cut our phone line as you're speaking to us, do you think they're open to hearing that message, Monsieur Berard?
Of course not. I mean, it goes against the mantra. I mean, don't forget that politically speaking, it pays big time to use that message that the French is endangered. Think about the PQ for like 40 years. And
Right.
the PQ at the beginning was right saying so, though. But now, look at the CAQ. Look what they did. They almost killed the PQ just because of the French issues, saying that we're going to take care of it. No worries. We don't need sovereignty. We'll be in charge. But what they are doing right now is taking measures without any basis. And this is the thing. And another thing I'd like to mention, when we say, the bonjour, hi, I mean, is that the end of the world? I mean, just take a look around the world. You go in Paris, you can go anywhere. And most of those big places, they will welcome you with the bonjour, hi, or whatever, hi. And doesn't mean that the French is in danger. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that they say, well, some people don't speak French when in some commerce in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, but this is, in my opinion, provoked by the lack of how do you say that? The lack of people who can work like for cheap labor. So most of those people are coming like to study to McGill and Concordia.
Right.
They're from Vancouver and then to MTO, whatever. And they didn't have time to learn French. So they're hired right away. Why? Because we lack some people to do to fill those jobs. So that's it. I mean, and why do we have that lack of people? Is because the CAQ just cut the immigration rate 2 years ago.
Right.
Excellent point. I always like to add too, like that's how I learned my French. That's how I perfected my French. When I started working my first job at Mexicali Roses downtown, my French was not great, but it got great in a hurry because I was working with a French clientele.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? If you hear a bonjour, hi, and then some broken French to follow, they're getting there.
By the way, can I just say it's interesting because you talked about the statistics the government looks at versus you saying here we have 94%, speaking the language. But the statistics, you mentioned Mark Termot earlier, so he says that they're using the statistic that French is going to decrease, right? People using French at home from 79 to 71% between now and 2036. And then a decrease in the population using French from 82% to about 75% in that same time period. Is that valid as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, well, but it's also based on what I said. It's based on mother tongue, or the language they speak at home. But if you consider just those two factors, I can assure you one thing, is that outside Quebec, anywhere else in Canada, then we're going to have to conclude that the English is in danger as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Because people come from other countries and they speak the language they want at their place. But
Wow.
I really don't care about that. I mean, they can speak the language they like at home. They can speak the language they like on the street. But I think that in Quebec, what we're asking people is that can we work in French? Can we live to a certain point in French? If the answer is yes, and I think that at 94% the answer is yes, then what's the big deal?
Make excellent points. You're kind
Such
of
good
a
points.
lone wolf voice, as you were,
Yeah.
as a francophone, actually acknowledging this, because it's one thing for an anglophone to say, look, if someone points out, and I, Dominic Anglade on the show, I always use this as a reference, after the Journal de Montréal did its study saying, oh, you can't get served in French in downtown Montreal, which is laughable to me because if you went to 100 stores, you might find one or two maybe with one of those students who were here doing a part-time job who couldn't serve you in French, but they use that as the basis to show that French is somehow in dire trouble, and that's why they have to, come up with Bill 96. So I'm glad to hear someone else with an opinion as a statistician saying, you know what, we're making a lot about not very much here. So, Monsieur Bérard, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, and if I just have 10 seconds, I'd like to say that Montreal downtown, it's not Quebec. It's Montreal downtown. That's
Good
it.
point.
That's all.
Fair enough. Frédéric Bérard, Doctor of Law. He's over at the Observatoire National en matière des droits linguistiques.
Let's keep him on the
Yeah,
Rolodex.
let's get him
Holy,
back.
That's
We have
so
your
interesting.
number.